Hello, everybody. Today we're going to take a look at another presidential political shift. This time it's going to be 1964 to 2020. Of course, if you want to just skip ahead to the map, there will be a chapter down below in the description. But if you want to hear a little bit more about these shifts, let's start by putting up both of these elections. 1964, that was Lyndon Johnson winning in a landslide. He won 486 electoral votes, 44 states plus D.C. He got over 61% of the popular vote. His Republican opponent was Barry Goldwater. He only got 52 electoral votes, carried 6 states, and got 38.5% of the popular vote. So that was a complete blowout for Johnson. So if we compare those shifts to 2020, of course we all remember that election. It was a much closer election, but it was another win for the Democrats. So there are going to be a lot of red shifts on here because we're comparing a landslide to a non-landslide. So that is going to make for some interesting shifts. So let's go back to the usual spreadsheet. In the first column, we have the states. The second column is the Democratic vote in 1964, Lyndon Johnson, followed by the Republican vote, Barry Goldwater. The next column is the 2020 Democratic vote, Joe Biden, followed by the Republican vote, Donald Trump. The next column are the Democratic shifts between those two elections, followed by the Republican shifts. And the last column, that's the net change between the two parties between the two elections. And I also have the usual shading here. The darkest colors are going to be 10 or more point shifts. The lightest colors are going to be under 5-point shifts, 3 levels of shading, and there's going to be some crazy shifts on here. So let's get started here in Alabama. In 1964, the electors in that state were unpledged, but to make it simple, we're going to say Johnson got 30.6% of the popular vote. Barry Goldwater, he got 69.5. Jump ahead to 2020, Joe Biden got 36.6. Donald Trump got 62. That's a net gain of 6% for the Democrats, a net loss of 7.5% for the Republicans, and that's a total net shift of 13.5% toward the Democrats. We would probably expect that to be a red shift, but given the unique circumstances back in '64, it actually led to a double-digit blue shift. So that's how this works. Let's move quickly through the rest of these states. Alaska, that had a monster shift toward the Republicans of 41.8. In Arizona, that was Barry Goldwater's home state in 1964. He was able to narrowly carry it by 1 point, and the state didn't really shift that much over all these decades, only 1.3 toward the Democrats. Arkansas, on the other hand, had another massive shift toward the GOP of 40.3. California went toward the Democrats by double digits, 10.9. Colorado went toward the right by 9.6. Connecticut, a little bit more toward the right by 15.7. Delaware, a smaller red shift there by 3.3. Florida also toward the GOP by 5.6. Georgia went 8.5 points toward the left. Hawaii had a big red shift of 28.2. The same in Idaho by 32.6. Illinois, small red shift there by 2.1. Another huge shift in Indiana, 28.4 toward the Republicans. Same in Iowa by 32.2. In Kansas by 23.7, and in Kentucky, take a look at that, 54.2. Louisiana had a much smaller red shift, and even 5%. Maine went 28.6 toward the GOP. Maryland defied the trend. That went back toward the Democrats by a small 2.2. Massachusetts, that's another blue state, but that went toward the Republicans by 19.3. Michigan shifted a big 30.8 toward the Republicans. Minnesota, another healthy shift there, 20.7 toward the right. Mississippi, on the other hand, that easily had the biggest shift toward the Democrats. It's a red state today, but comparing it with the circumstances back in '64, it ended up shifting a mammoth 57.7 toward the Democrats. Missouri went almost in the complete opposite direction, 43.5 toward the Republicans. Montana got redder by 34.7, so did Nebraska by 24.3. Nevada also got redder by 14.8, New Hampshire by 20.5, and New Jersey by 15.8. New Mexico also got redder, but not by double digits, only 8.2. Back up to more big shifts toward the Republicans. New York, 14.1. North Carolina, 13.5. North Dakota, a colossal 49.4. Ohio, 33.9. Oklahoma, 44.6. Oregon, 11.7. Pennsylvania, 29. And Rhode Island, an even 41%. That is a very big shift in a blue state like Rhode Island. South Carolina was a bright spot for the Democrats. It shifted in their direction by 6.1. South Dakota, on the other hand, that went hard back toward the Republicans by 37.4. Tennessee, similar margin, 34.2. And also in Texas, Lyndon Johnson's home state back in '64, 32.4 toward the Republicans. and Utah also clearing 30%, 30.2 toward the Republicans. Vermont managed to shift toward the Democrats by 2.8, same margin, same direction in Virginia, 2.8. Washington had a red shift of 5.4. West Virginia had the biggest shift out of all the states, one of the biggest we've ever seen, 74.7 away from the Democrats and toward the Republicans. Wisconsin went toward the right by 23.7, and in Wyoming, that had a giant lurch toward the right by 56.5. Those are the states, but we also have Washington, D.C. That shifted 15.8 toward the Democrats. So that's all the data, all of the states, all of the shifts. And if you want to see it all applied to a map to help visualize, I've got you covered. Here it is, all of the states with the same 3 levels of shading. So there you go. And if you're looking for any takeaways from these shifts, the first one is obviously, this is a very red map. Again, 1964 was a landslide year for the Democrats. 2020, much closer of an election. So most of these states are going to shift pretty hard toward the Republicans. And you saw on the spreadsheet, there were some gigantic shifts. Many states easy, over 20 or 30 points. Surprisingly, the states that shifted toward the Democrats are mostly in the Deep South. Those are red states today, but they went so hard for Barry Goldwater back in '64 that they ended up shifting toward the left. California, that's also a bright spot for the Democrats. Most of the Northeast is red. Illinois is red. Even Hawaii is deep red. There's a few states that did shift toward the Democrats outside of the Deep South. Arizona, Virginia, Maryland, and Vermont. But that's not saying a whole lot. These are the things you're going to expect to see comparing 2 very different elections that span 5 or 6 decades. A lot of states underwent 1 or 2 political transformations over all that time, so it's not really unexpected to see these kinds of shifts. The easiest thing to say is it's a great night for the Republicans, a terrible night for the Democrats. That's true, but it's a little bit unfair, and there doesn't really have to be a lot of takeaways. There's just so much time between these 2 elections. A lot of things have changed during that time, but if you like seeing shifts and you like seeing maps, then these are the shifts between these 2 elections. So let me know in the comments, what do you think about any of the shifts in any of these states? Are there any other takeaways? Did you have a good time seeing these shifts? Let me know down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.